Hello guys, and welcome back to the Wensleydale Quilt Along. This is Laura with Quilted Chicken, and we are at week 5 of our 6-week project. This is layout week, so we're just going to talk a little bit about block placement and color. As I have said before, this is a scrappy quilt, so if you don't want to overthink it or do too much planning, you absolutely do not have to, but I'm still going to get my blocks put on the wall. I'm going to play around with the placement because nothing makes me more sad than getting a whole quilt sewn together, putting the binding on and seeing that there's something that just doesn't fit to me. So now you think to yourself, it's scrappy, who cares? But I personally like to find the order in the chaos of scrappy. There are enough things in life that we can't control. That are messy, that are unorganized. This little piece of life, this time that I spend quilting in my quilt therapy, when we get to do what we want to do, I do like to have a little bit of organization. So we'll just take a look at how I set things up, and then we'll just go from there. Now, I do have a design wall here. It's in our dining room. That's the only wall in the house that didn't have a lot of stuff hanging on it. I actually put 2 of those foam insulation boards together. There's 2 of them. They're 4 foot by 8 foot, and it's just covered in a flannel sheet. I searched do-it-yourself design wall on Pinterest, YouTube, I can't remember, and just found a quick video. It was easy, but I do recommend that you put this together in the same room where it will live, or cut the foam down into more reasonably sized pieces. If you move things around in your sewing area, it is a booger to try to cart around a queen size flat object. So on our layout, I started by taking the stack of my completed blocks, and I just fit through. I quickly found blocks that worked with each other and pinned each side up on the wall. This was a pretty easy task because you've got all the color combinations to choose from. We've got our 62 blocks. You just pass on whatever does not work right away. I just wanted a starting point here. I think I had 6 across, which is the full width of the quilt, and then I had 4 rows down. I'd have to look back at the video, but I feel like a lot of those original placement blocks wound up being in just about the same area that I initially put them. So that's your starting point. There are a total of 10 vertical rows in this quilt, so we're going to keep our center in the middle, our 4x6. I counted up 3 rows, and then I counted down 3 rows to fill in with the rest of the blocks. So I took the darkest fabrics, and I took our polka dots, and I positioned those next. Anything that really jumps out to you, polka dots are just my favorite. They're on my radar, but we do have 3 or 4 in this fabric bundle. And it just kind of draws the eye because it's the same print. Same with our darker fabrics. Our darker fabrics were this blue, and then some of our reds and magentas. Again, I put a few of these blocks around the outside edge of the quilt. Just for me, it sort of frames and sort of finishes that quilt. And then once I got all of some of the darker prints and those polka dots, I just filled everything else in with the layout. Again, I said that it's 6 by 10. So you'll get all of those filled in. I have seen where some people have run the block the other direction, but this is just how it is in the original book. So we've just got it. We just did it that way. So once you've got all your blocks up, I took a step back. I stood back behind the dining room table about 8 or 10 feet back, and I took a picture with my phone. That way you can see if there's anything that just didn't look like it was in the right spot. And you may love it first time around. I tend to be picky, and I'm not the only one. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I don't think I have ever gotten my final layout the first time around. And it blows my mind when I hear somebody just stuck it up there their first go and it was perfect for them and they just started it that way. I just can't do that. So after the first picture, I came back over and I moved any more blocks around that looked like they didn't belong. This time around, I pinned them on both sides. First time was kind of a quick, you just throw them up there and see what's happening. It's kind of your rough draft, but I wanted to see a better idea of how everything looked. So I got both sides of the blocks laid out. Again, I moved back, I took another photo until I was happy. And I probably spent about an hour. I probably took about 50,000 pictures. And I know that when I get back to sewing the quilt together, there's going to be something that just jumps out at me. Again, you can't get it perfect. Your brain may just be tired and overwhelmed, and it just says, this is the stopping point. This is good. There was one block that I kept. Oh, no, the one block, the lighter teal polka dot that we had, it just kept jumping out at me. It was the absolute lightest block. I couldn't find it a home up here, and I didn't want to save that for my project. So I actually picked a different tilde fabric, and I'm going to put that on those outside edges. There was one block that I saved. This was my absolute favorite block, and I wanted to save it for our bonus project. At the end, this is the one that I'm going to want to put on my bag. So I just couldn't, it had several places in the quilt that looked nice. I think it's because it was my favorite. So the next step is just to take these down and get them ready for sewing. What I typically do is I'll take the first row off in order, and I'll stack them, and I'll label each row so that I've got those handy to sew. I'll have them right together at the machine without getting a lot of up and down. So let's talk about papers. There are several options for when you take the papers off of the quilt. The very first Wensleydale that I did, I left the papers on the entire time. I stitched the whole quilt together, and then I spent a week, maybe a day and a half, pulling the papers off. The cutting template that we do for this does not leave a bias edge on any of your outer sections. So you could certainly remove the papers before you do any sewing, which I think I'm going to give that a try this time around. It'll save time at the end because there's a lot of fabric and paper to handle when you're trying to get those papers off, especially along the seam lines and in the corners of each of those block sections once they're all put together. So I think taking the papers off now will save some time of that picking in the long run. So it's a single block. You're not trying to move 60 of them around to get to the back of them. You certainly could leave the whole papers on. You could piece 2 rows, piece 1 whole row, sew it to the next row, and then remove the papers from that top row. You continue to sew a row and remove a row of papers so that each row that you add to, you'll have the papers intact for those edges. But when you get finished, you've just got 2 rows to take it off at the end. I also thought about removing just the centers. If you just want a little bit of stability around the edges, you could just take the middle part out. But that's up to you. If you wanted to research, get online, look at some YouTube videos and see what method you like for removing the papers. But that's it. This week is just finding your layout and sewing. Next week, we're going to check back in on everybody's progress. We're going to talk about our next project that we've got planned for Jen Kingwell's for one of her quilts, and I'm really excited. We're going to be doing the Shooting Star quilt. We will have fabric kits. We'll have a thread set, so definitely come back and see what we've got going on there. Remember, you can join the free Facebook group. You can share your progress. I think a lot of quilting and just getting inspired, and we're having a lot of fun with this. But until next week, happy sewing. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you then.